Hello world. So today is April 8, 2017. In today's video I wanna share with you the book which is called the 440 Enigma, the musical conspiracy to separate mankind from the divine. Also, you will be able to hear the audio, which is an interview with the author of the book, L C Vincent, here on the archives 2014 gcnlive.com. It's really important stuff. So let's go. Editor's note. Last week L C Vincent invited me to listen to an interview with him on the Joyce Riley's Hour of Power radio show, discussing his latest book, The Enigma, the 440 Enigma, the conspiracy to separate mankind from the divine. I listened to this interview in its entirety yesterday, and I have to say at the beginning of the interview I was skeptical, mostly because I had never even heard of this information anywhere before. Knowing Mr. Vincent from past emails and articles he has contributed to the site, I have the titles and links at the bottom of this page. I knew I should listen to his interview in full. I am glad I did, and I hope you do too, because this is profound and amazing information that explains many of the thinking disorders I have been a witness to, especially here in the US. In my opinion, Mr. Vincent knocks it out of the ballpark with this absolutely compelling information. I ordered his book today. And remember, as always, I'm not affiliated with any sales or profit of it in any way through the sales of his book or anything on my website. So, just a quick intro by L C Vincent about his book. The difference between an A432 Hz and an A440 Hz. Hear it, understand it. Frequency and vibration hold a critically important yet hidden power to affect our lives, our health, our society, and our world. The science of Cymatics proves that frequency and vibration are the master keys and organizational foundation for the creation of all matter and life on this planet. Music has a hidden power to affect our minds, our bodies, our thoughts, and our society. When that music is based upon a tuning standard purposely removed from the natural harmonics found in sacred numbers and the Fibonacci series of nature, the end result may be the psychic poisoning of the mass mind of humanity. A nefarious alliance between the Rockefellers, the Third Reich, and the landmark Chicago musical instrument maker may have promoted the acceptance of a Western musical tuning standard totally disconnected from the science of sacred numbers to the detriment of mankind. Despite its near universal adoption by the Western world, could the 440 Hz tuning standard actually promote war, disease, death? Might the most beautiful symphonies and melodies be covertly creating conflict and destruction throughout our world? The 440 Enigma provides the answers to these thought-provoking questions and sheds new light on how our current musical tuning standard, A440 Hz, came to be, and what it may mean to our world if we allow it to continue. So here you have part 1, part 2. For you I will play part 1. The rest is here, so you check it out if you're going to be interested. 440 Enigma on Facebook. Get the book here. Okay, so let's start with the audio. I will start from 8:10 because that's when the interview starts. Okay, let's go.
Radio show. Ladies and gentlemen, it is 8 minutes past the hour, moving into the second hour of our broadcast today on the 12th day of September. My name is J.D. Moore. With me in the studio is Josh, and always the beautiful Joyce Riley. We are all very excited today. We've been listening to some music today that was kind of off the beaten path for us. We're going to be speaking to a gentleman named L C Vincent, who has written a book called the 440 Enigma, and it's the musical conspiracy to separate mankind from the divine. And essentially, we're going to be talking about how the musical scale was developed and whether or not there has been some outside influence on that musical scale, the musical scale that we consider to be the normal musical scale here in Western music, and whether or not that influence might have had some ulterior motives to kind of not be in our best interest. So L C Vincent is a unique gentleman. He has got so much experience when it comes to music and frequency and things like that. He's a writer, he's a musician, he's a photojournalist. He was born in L.A., but he spent his formative years growing there before moving to Chicago, went to the University of Illinois. He also studied under Dwayne Pham, who was a principal with the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. He's formed several musical groups. He's recorded for Mercury Records. I mean, this gentleman has been there and done that when it comes to music. We're very excited to have him join us on the program today to discuss this with us. L C Vincent, thank you so much for being here today.
Well, thank you very much for that introduction.
Well, for sure. As I said, this is a topic. Josh and I are both music nerds. I mean, we're going to put that out on the table right off the bat. We're nerds, and we really have been interested in this topic. I have to tell you, though, Elsie, as a music major in school, I studied music for 5 years on 2 different continents, and I had not heard about this. This is completely new to me. So if we could, before we get too far into it, I'd like to learn a little bit more about you and how you got interested in this topic, and then if you could kind of walk us through the rudimentary, getting everybody on the same page with what we're actually talking about when we're talking about this 440 hertz, if you would, sir.
Sure, I'll be happy to do that. But, as mentioned on my bio, I was a professional musician for a number of years when I was in Chicago. And after undergraduate school, I moved out to San Francisco. And one of the things that I enjoyed doing was to go to the San Francisco Symphony on a regular basis, and was a season subscriber. During that time, when I was going to the Symphony actually had a lecturing program. Actually, it was a series of lectures that lasted for 2 to 3 months. That was conducted by the orchestra master of the San Francisco Symphony. And during that time, I began really studying the whole idea of the fundamental tuning frequencies that Western orchestras ultimately developed as their keynote frequency for tuning. When we were studying that as a lay group, we started with the 12th century Gregorian chants, all the way up to Bach, Beethoven, Franz Liszt, Richard Wagner, all the musical giants. But leaving in the back of my mind while I was studying all these people was, what was the reason, what was the fundamental reason that basically one certain frequency became the keynote tuner frequency, which is now considered above middle frequency as 440 hertz. How was that selected? Who made that choice? How was that decided upon? Because I thought, you have all these musicians throughout the world. Probably some of them prefer lower frequencies, some prefer higher frequencies. In fact, if you study classical music, you realize that both Liszt and Wagner actually like frequency frequencies that are higher than what we're using today. They preferred A to be 434 hertz. Excuse me, 430 hertz. I'm sorry. They preferred A to be 434 hertz. Although middle series is actually even 4 cycles higher than standard tuning. But there were people like Giuseppe Verdi, who in the 19th century and in 1885 actually went to the Italian legislature to get a law passed that they had to be 432 hertz. So people are very passionate about on many sides of the debate. So towards the end of this lecture series, I asked the orchestra master of the San Francisco Symphony, okay, we studied all the history of classical music. We studied how the different forms of the classical structure came about. But we determined the tuning frequency equals 440 hertz. And I figured he'd have a very clear-cut answer. It had to be cut and dry. And actually, he didn't know it. And I was stunned to find out. The reason why I had been involved in classical music probably 30, 40 years, and he actually didn't know the most basic questions to me of how everything was played, how that came about, how that tuning frequency came about.
I would wonder if any of my professors would be able to tell me that answer if I went back to my school and asked them that.
You don't want to ask them.
I'm planning on writing some emails after this interview, sir. Can we, before we get too much further though, I'd like to define what a keynote is for people who don't know anything about music. I don't want to get past that point. So what is a keynote and how does it relate to what we're talking about?
Well, that's a perfect question. The keynote is essentially, if you go to a classical concert, there's a note everybody starts tuning up to a certain note. And currently that note is A above middle C, A equals 440 hertz. So even if you go back in time, anytime two musicians came together, they had to essentially decide upon a certain tuning standard, otherwise it would be impossible for them to play together. So if you had two young musicians, they had to choose a key frequency to tune all the strings of their instrument to, or to tune their flutes or their reeds. There had to be a commonality, a common ground, and that was the keynote frequency by which all the other notes, both below and above that frequency, would resonate in harmony.
Okay.
So over the years, the keynote frequency has been debated by many orchestras, and including huge orchestral societies like the British and the French. And that's an interesting story we can get into later during the program is how that actually came about around World War I and World War II. Okay, the keynote frequency is the tuning frequency. It is the standard frequency by which all the instruments are tuned both below and above that frequency.
All right, correct me if I'm wrong, but in terms of musical scale, a musical scale is broken down into what are called intervals, which are equidistant, divisions of an entire scale. So when you set the keynote or the key, all of your other intervals for all of the other notes are based on that one keynote. Is that correct?
Yes, precisely true. Yeah, that's right.
So why then is it so important that everyone come to an agreement on what that A440 or whatever that A might be? Why is that so important in musical context?
Well, first of all, as I said, it's important that people have to agree on a certain tuning frequency in order to play together. But there was this back and forth that was going on around the turn of the last century, actually starting in 1886. The American Federation of Musicians began to push for the tuning standard in the United States of A equals 440, and they got the United States government to adopt that standard. And as it turns out, at the same time, around the year between 1886 and 1910, the Rockefeller Foundation donated a huge amount of money to the American Federation of Musicians and also to Washington to get this established. And the greatest question goes to why did the Rockefellers have really any interest in any kind of musical tuning standard? I mean, what was really for them? It just doesn't seem to make sense. But actually, the more you actually research it, the Rockefellers treated the Federation of Musicians as a musical instrument maker by William John C. Deegan from Chicago. Began to push the standard, and then during World War II, this equals 440 standard was beginning to be pushed throughout the European orchestras, including the English and French. A very curious phenomenon happened. Both the English musicians, classical musicians, and the French musicians rebelled against this push for A equals 440. They wanted A equals to be 432 hertz. Despite that, the British Standards Institute, meeting with the representatives of the German government in 1939 around the world, cast the de facto standard that A had to be 440 hertz. One of the objections of classical musicians are their own musicians. So, again, I found that fascinating. You would think that the British Standards Institute would reflect the notions of their members, but they did not. They were open. So that was the main flight as to why that should be.
You know, when you mentioned the Rockefeller name, that raises a red flag for me. And so this is early, like you said, 1896, I believe it was 1917 when they got the American Musical Society to adopt this. That means that, 1910, I'm sorry. Oh, okay, so that, there is a reason behind that. Why would they change that, right? That to me says that they had some knowledge of some information, as far as what it does to society or to us physically. All the way back then, they had knowledge of this changing what it does to people. Do you have any knowledge of the research that they were doing back then? All the way back in the 1800s?
That's something that they would be happy with the textbook, because I really want to find out that obviously when you have access to great wealth, you also have potential access to great knowledge. So all I can really conclude is somewhere along the line, as they were accumulating this wealth, they also had access to esoteric knowledge. But if you study the history of the Rockefellers, you find that the Rockefellers are actually acting as subversion agents for Rothschild.
LC, we've got to take a quick 4-minute break. We're going to come back. I want to keep talking about the Rockefellers and this agenda. I also want to talk about why 432. How did we get to that number?
A conspiracy of sound. Unbelievable.
Okay, we will skip the break.
My Magic Mud is also the perfect remedy for pain caused by sensitivity. It strengthens your teeth and gums for a strong, healthy smile. The ingredients are 100% natural and it's safe for children. Simply brush with My Magic Mud right before bedtime for a cleaning you can count on. Visit mymagicmud.com.
Imagine. This is John Lennon's Imagine, played in 432.
Imagine all the people living for today.
And that was 432. Let's listen to it in 440 and see if we can tell the difference. Can tell, but boy, that really impacts me in a different way. Holy cow, I did not realize that was going to be so profound. Wow.
Okay, let's go back to Josh. Can you play it? It's already gone. Can you play it again in 440?
This is 432 that Josh is playing.
Well, it's going to take a second to load. I exited out. I'm sorry. Can we get a comment from the guests?
Sure, LC. We're joined today by L C Vincent. We're talking about the conspiracy behind the 440 and the A above middle C and how those frequencies can affect all of our music. LC, are you able to hear the difference, you think, between these two different versions of Imagine that we're playing?
Yeah, the difference is there to most people is the subtle difference, but there is a difference.
I find it that a lot of my friends have...
It 432, it sounds more rich.
Right.
It has a deeper emotional vibration for whatever reason.
That's exactly it. And I have a lot of friends who are...
There's a primary factor. And the reason why 432 is really the tuning standard that should have been adopted rather than 440.
I'm not as musically trained as either JD or you. I generally operate on gut instinct, and I feel at first when I heard that the 440 played, it felt like more of a tension that was involved. I don't know how to describe it other than that.
That's a perfect description.
Well, that's because all of the harmonies are essentially dissonant. If you start with 440, all of the intervals then are dissonant intervals. Is that correct?
That's correct. Because the keynote being 440, if 440 is not what they call related to cosmic ratios or cosmic numbers, and it isn't, then everything both above and below and every point is going to be somehow slightly disharmonious. But going back to the very basics, it really came down to this one as I was putting it together, it became apparent that sound is the organizational principle of matter creation. In other words, in the universe and our universe, we have vibration, and vibration can be perceived by us as sound, heat, and light. But nevertheless, all of its vibration at different frequencies. These vibrations create patterns in matter. The real question is, what are the patterns you're creating? If we move forward in time, there was a gentleman, actually a musician, by the name of Ernst Chaladny. He was a violinist around 1787. He discovered that if he put flour on a glass plate and drew his violin bow across the plate, it produced patterns on the flour on the glass plate through the vibrations of his bow. But moving forward in time, this phenomenon became the science of cymatics, which actually solidified around 1967. Was a man by the name of Dr. Hans Johnny. And he actually coined the term cymatics. He began to study how sound, frequency, and vibration affected the patterns that can be observed on metal plates if you put sound on these plates. And he found that...
I just want to interrupt. For the listeners, we included a video of that exact effect, so people who don't know what cymatics, there's going to be in the email blast today. There's a fantastic YouTube video which shows exactly what it is that you're talking about right now. Please go ahead.
Right, well, as he studied it, he saw that there were certain frequencies produced beautiful Mandela-like effects visually. But as he was going through the frequency patterns, he would see that as he went from certain frequencies to others, there were areas where there was basically disharmony. And that was as the frequencies went through this range and then attained another frequency that was harmonious. So as he studied it, he began to realize that certain frequencies were very constructive, shall we say, or harmonious visually, and others were actually really destructive and chaotic.
You know, as you're speaking about this, I'm reminded of this movie called Water. And it's a Japanese scientist who does these experiments with water. Right, absolutely. You know, you tell one glass of water, I love you, another one, I hate you, another one, you don't say anything, and then flash freeze it and look at the crystals, and the results are unbelievable.
Yeah, we talk about it all the time, how profound the effect of frequency can be on everything around us. We can't tell you
especially us, as made up of water.
Yep. We've got to take a quick 3-minute break, LC. We're going to come back and we're going to continue this discussion. Just absolutely fascinating stuff. Thank you so much for being here today. Joyce, Josh, and JD on the Power Hour. We'll be right back.
Extract as great a value now as it was the first day we sold it. A healthy heart is a happy heart. Call 866-295-5305 or go to hbextract.com.
Shortwave as it does for the rest of us, because that is absolutely gorgeous. And speaking of shortwave, we're going to have a brand new shortwave. It's about the size of and looks like a smartphone.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Very small, but very powerful. So we're going to be getting that before long. I let the cat out of the bag, but we will have it very soon. Welcome back to the Power Hour. Thank you for joining us. Josh, was that 432 or 440?
Yes, ma'am, that was 432.
That was 432. So Vivaldi did all of his music in 432? Is that right? Who's the Vivaldi expert here?
Well, that wasn't Vivaldi. That was Mozart, the Moonlight Sonata, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, that's right.
And I don't believe that Vivaldi did do all of his music in 432.
He had mentioned 444.
Right.
You know, or maybe that was Wagner. I can't remember.
I think that was Wagner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, welcome back to the Power Hour. Thank you for joining us. Just let me remind you, we have a lot of things on special at the Power Mall. Purium still on sale. Strauss Heart Drops, that's a biggie. That is a biggie everybody likes to take advantage of. Remember, we've got the Numander Defender packs. Numana Food, if you want to get some without GMOs and you want to start storing food up for the winter, then think about Numana. It's an amazing item, the best we can find for you, along with the vegan burgers. That is a huge one. The vegan burgers are so good.
Mm-hmm.
Please take advantage of getting those in the 1 pound or the packages that you can store away for 2 years, and it makes a raw vegan burger.
I like to call them the stuffed green pepper mixes right now, because that's, oh man, they're so good.
They really are. They really are. Truth is a Lonely Warrior. That's the book by James Perloff on how you've been lied to on our history. Paprika on sale. 1 pound of paprika, $13.50, and the vegetable soup blend is on sale for $19.25. Sally Enterprises products, those are the best when it comes to something to heal a burn or whatever. Heal On, Sugarfoot, Anti-Wrinkle Cream, Lip Balm, Island Sunburn Lotion, and Lamb Cream. They will be going off special this today, so get it by 4 p.m. today. Mm-hmm. And then all the 9/11 stuff that we have. 9/11, the smoking gun version of the Pentagon, the new Pearl Harbor 3-disc set on sale for $26, 7 days in September. But I do want to warn you, now this is a video of catching people as they saw 9/11 happening, or as they were filming it. It's their response. So there are some bad words in it, and you might want to be careful of that. 9/11 explosive evidence, the experts speak out. 1975 on special, and of course remember In Plain Sight, which is, will go down in history, I think, and the Ripple Effect. 9/11 In Plain Sight and 9/11 Ripple Effect on sale for $13.50 and $17.75. So get those at the Power Mall, 877-817-9829, 877-817-9829, or go to thepowermall.com.
And we are picking up our conversation. I want to thank all the listeners today for really sticking in this. I know this is kind of a deeper issue than some of the things that we talk about, but really, really fascinating stuff. Can't tell LC how happy we are that he is explaining some of this to us. We talked a little bit in the last segment about cymatics, which is the study of how frequency affects matter. And so we can really say without a shadow of a doubt that different frequencies do actually affect matter, water, everything around us. And it's actually the nature of creation is actually frequency, which you could probably get if you've read the Bible there. But what I want to talk about, since we know that frequency can have an effect on us, is how did you arrive, or how did we arrive at that 432 number? Where did that number come from, and what makes us so sure that that one is the correct one, LC?
That's an excellent question. That number seems to be built into the cosmos of our universe. Just to give you some examples, the diameter of the moon is 2,160 miles, or 5 times 432. The diameter of the sun is 864,000 miles, or 432,000 times 2. The precession of the zodiac equinox is 25,920 years, or 432 times 60. 12 hours is 432,000 seconds. So 432 and multiples of 432 seem to be predominant throughout the physical structure of our universe, and we're directly tied into it as humans, not only on this planet, but as humans as part of the cosmos. So it is considered to be a keystone, a foundational frequency of our universe, a sacred number from which other numbers are derived.
Isn't that represented? I'm sorry. Isn't that represented in like the golden mean or the golden spiral or the Fibonacci sequence?
Well, it is, and actually, the Greeks actually made a study in the science of music. In fact, Pythagoras, the geometry of music solidified. And what they call the golden mean, the golden ratio, is crucially important because the Fibonacci series is the way our 12-tone musical scale has been generated through the Fibonacci series. And that series, that ratio from one principle of measurement to another can be found throughout nature in seashells, in the construction of seashells, and the way leaves generate from trees, and the way sunflowers go around the radius of their central core. You can see it in the formation of the planets and the spacing of the planets. In fact, Johannes Kepler, who was an astronomer in the 17th century, coined the term music of the spheres, but what he was really describing was the ratio between the planets and their spacing out to our solar system. There's actually the Fibonacci series, or the golden ratio, is even evident in that in the spacing of the planets and their orbits throughout outer space.
Wow. It really flies in the face of anybody who might think that everything was just happenstance or just happened by chance. This idea that the universe itself is fundamentally broken down into, ratios that produce harmonies that inherently produce, life itself is, that's such a profound thought, LC.
And we see these patterns constantly observed with centuries, and that if you have a tuning keynote, a vibrational keynote that's reflective of these cosmic ratios, you produce music that is harmonious. Conversely, if you're having tuning keynote that is disconnected from these cosmic ratios and proportions, you're going to have music that subtly and yet profoundly affects your cellular structure, your thought process, your physical well-being. And that's what we've ended up with, because 440 as a tuning standard is disconnected from cosmic harmonic ratios. You remember Nikola Tesla, of course, is a great scientist, and he was also incredibly suppressed, or his discoveries were. But one of the interesting things about Tesla is that Tesla was obsessed with the number 3. A lot of people don't even know that, but he would always try to do things with 3s, and if he couldn't do things with 3s, it really bothered him. And why is this? Well, I can't speak for him, obviously, but if you look at 432, it's divisible by 3, and anything that is apparently cosmically harmonic will be divisible evenly by 3, but 440 is not. So that's a giveaway as to the fact that 440 is a disharmonious cognitively.
Well, it seems like the rule, if they're divisible by 3, then they're beneficial, and if they're easily divisible by 2, then they may be more destructive.
Well, again, you hit it right on the head. 2 is the principle of division and opposition, and 3 is the principle of reconciliation and harmony.
Well, I'm hesitant to make a joke here, but I think this 440 thing is probably why we have bands like Nickelback. But aside from that, I want to get back to... I couldn't stand it. I had to get it in there. I had to do it. So we're talking a little bit about the Rockefeller influence on, how this disconnect actually came about. Let's talk about that agenda. Was it just the Rockefellers that are responsible, and how deep do you feel like that agenda has gone, and where have we seen it? Where have we seen it come to fruition in our society?
Well, wonderful questions. And as I began to research it, I began to discover these strange quirks that on the surface are like nothing, but when you really think about it, they're really pretty profound. If you assume that 440 is discordant and disharmonious and produces subtle negative effects upon our thought processes and our cellular structure, you realize that let's say, the financial interests that are heavily invested in armaments and destruction and chaos would stand to each other. So using that as as our guide, and going back into the turn of the last century, the 19th century, when these standards were being promoted, this is what I discovered. The Rockefellers, there was a man named John C. Deegan who in the 1870s was obsessed with percussion instruments. We're talking about glockenspiels, vibraphones, anything that was solid percussion, okay, but that created musical sound. And he developed the glockenspiel into something that actually sounded beautiful, but he was pushing a tuning frequency of A equals 440. Now, the interesting thing is that you create musical instruments that cannot be varied in their tune, like percussion instruments, so like glockenspiels, bells, chimes, vibraphones, things that are solid and have to vibrate at certain frequencies. Then you begin to have patterns that are replicated throughout the musical world. Well, John C. Deegan became a very influential member of the American Federation of Musicians that began pushing around 1896 to have that A equals 440 tuning standard become the predominant tuning standard. And in 1910, the American Federation of Musicians received this big grant from the Rockefeller Foundation for that same purpose. Now, the interesting thing is, in 1912, John C. Deegan opened the John C. Deegan Musical Instrument Factory in Chicago. Now, this factory is utterly monumental. It is 1 square city block. It is 5 stories high. I mean, it had to cost, even in 1912, it had to cost millions and millions of dollars. Now, where does a person who just makes musical instruments get that kind of money? Well, there's only one real logical source, and that's through the Rockefellers. Because the amount of money necessary to build a building that large, that immense, would go way beyond the financial resources of somebody who just makes glockenspiels. So anyway, what ended up happening is the Rockefellers apparently financed the construction of this enormous building for the sole purpose of creating percussion music instruments at the frequency of A equals 440. So John C. Deegan began cranking out these instruments, glockenspiels, symphonic chimes, bells, vibraphones, anything that were percussion instruments that were solid.
And so, Elsie, this would be something kind of like a xylophone. So for people who don't know, it's a piece of wood, so you couldn't detune it because you would have to physically change the shape of the wood. So that's why he's saying that these are instruments that cannot be retuned. Okay, so please continue.
Right. So, unlike a guitar or a violin, where the tuning really is up to the individual player, they come from the factory preset. Now, here's the interesting thing, and this is what I discovered. The Deegan Company began making these carillons. These are enormous structures that were connected to bell towers throughout the United States. They were electronically controlled, so that these carillons, which were usually sold to churches. In fact, when I was growing up in Chicago, there was one block from my house. These carillons would basically chime on the hour at different musical frequencies. They would play different songs that were classically oriented, but they would all chime in 440 because that was what they were set to. And these were placed throughout the United States, and these carillons were nuts. I mean, if you put a man next to it, they're about 4 or 5 times taller than a man. I mean, they're enormous.
Right.
Then they also made the chimes for NBC television and NBC radio. During the beginning of radio and the early ages of television, NBC used a triple note pattern that were based on NBC chimes, and these NBC chimes became such a part of our culture that they were used in Santa Fe Railroad passenger cars to announce breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Wow, that is fascinating. That is really, I mean, people remember that, I think. A lot of people
remember it.
Yeah.
So now what you're really seeing when you pull back is a nation that is a day in this A equals 440 frequency, morning, noon, and night. They get it on the radio, they get it on television, they get it in their neighborhoods from the carillon chime systems that were installed throughout America. And that's basically blanketing the U.S. with A equals 440, which is disharmonious.
Wow. I gotta go back really quick and recap everything that you just said, because we're talking about John Deegan creating non-tunable instruments in Chicago, being funded fully by the Rockefellers, apparently, and then, so you've got an institutional change in music that has been fundamentally institutionalized, and then you've got them creating these carillons, which blanket the entire country in that same fixed tuning. I mean, and that's such a short order from 1896 just to 1912 to essentially be able to affect everyone in the country like that, not even getting into the fact that NBC is using it on the chimes and on the radio. The agenda here that we're seeing is just profound, sir, just profound.
I completely agree. And
again, let me just add on those NBC chimes, because if people remember that, I mean, I wish we had the sound note so people could hear it. But what was the impact of that? I mean, why would you want to do that, or what do you think was the motive behind that?
Well, the primary motive really is to constantly have this discordant frequency affect the mental process and the cellular structures of our body. It's been discovered that our cells, all cells of our body vibrate at certain frequencies. In fact, each one of our major organ systems has a primary frequency of vibration. But cells actually not only vibrate, they actually make vibrational noise. So if you have a resonance pattern that is disharmonious to cellular structure, you create almost in that cell.
We've got to take another 3-minute break. We're going to come back. I want to talk about how those tones actually affect our bodies and what they do to us. This is just profound, amazing stuff.
It's amazing. We'll be back. 3 minutes. Stay tuned.
Free.com. Learn stocks for free.com. Or call 877-600-4264. Promo code GCN. 877-600-4264. Promo code GCN.
Freedom is only one generation away from extinction, but you can save it in an entertaining way by rediscovering the U.S. Constitution through a fun game. Constitution Quest is not your average board game. It's a way to gather your family and friends and enjoy learning about our system of limited government, separation of powers, and the 3 branches of legislative, judicial, and executive power. For the next generation, a strong knowledge of civics is a must-have. Go to ConstitutionQuest.com and order your Constitution Quest game today.
Show, ladies and gentlemen. 54 minutes past the hour. That is Fuji's Lauryn Hill playing at 4:32. Man, I'm just so amazed.
Carlos Santana.
Well, that just adds to it, doesn't it? Carlos Santana, holy cow. So right now we're speaking with L C Vincent. I want to encourage everyone to go check out his website, which is just L, the letter L, the letter C, Vincent, VINCENT.blogspot.com. And I really want to recommend people purchase this book, too. This 440 Enigma book is riveting. There's so much great information in it. Honestly, Vincent, I see a lot of books about conspiracy stuff. The list of Rockefeller influence that you have in that book is second to nothing I've ever seen in any other book, my friend. I mean, very, very well done. Oh, I'm sure it's not. I mean, you'd probably take a book 6 times that size to talk about really what the Rockefellers have done to us in general. I want to get back to this discussion about the effects that these frequencies have on our bodies, and of course we're talking about cymatics again, and I want to spell that for the listeners that may have missed it earlier. Cymatics is C-Y-M-A-T-I-C-S, which is the study of frequency on solid matter and also liquids. But what do we know from the field of cymatics or from the Emoto study? What can we say for sure about the effects of frequency on our body, and then what can we extrapolate from that to talk about this agenda of the Rockefellers, sir?
Well, what we know from the Monsieur Emoto in the study of water and how thought affects water is essentially that thought is something that is actually real. Thought is a vibration, and it's a real vibration. Physicists like Niels Bohr and Werner Heisenberg have discovered to their amazement that their thoughts and expectations affected the reality of their physical experiments. So essentially what it means is that if you have an outside agent, which would be music, affecting the way your cells actually vibrate, and also affecting the way your body and the way your thoughts are formulated, that can either be essentially a positive or negative experience. So if you have a tuning standard that is based on a frequency that is essentially disharmonious at its core and disconnected from cosmic numbers and harmonic ratios, you're going to get the kind of thought patterns that are essentially destructive, very competitive, very confrontational. Excuse me. So the irony is, you can be listening to the most beautiful symphonic orchestra in the world, or any kind of beautiful music piece, and superficially, consciously, it sounds wonderful, it sounds pleasant, and yet suddenly, subconsciously, it is actually creating disharmony throughout your body and throughout your mind and your thought process, because it is not based on the cosmic ratios and the cosmic frequency of 432. So it's actually producing a negative effect overall, even though consciously it seems like it's positive. So there's a real subtle irony there, and a very subversive one too.
Yeah, well, it's amazing that we can pinpoint effects on the thoughts, because I keep coming back to this idea of the NBC chimes, playing before the news and after the news, and how an effect.
Every 15 minutes.
Was it really? I mean, what do you think that would do to somebody in terms of, your critical thinking skills? Say someone's presenting some ideas to you about the news and about what's going on in the world, and all of a sudden they throw this frequency at you that affects your ability to think correctly, or affects even your ability for your body to react correctly. It's just mind-blowing, the subtle nature of that and how profound the effect might be.
I'm going to ask a question. Let me just ask, could that be considered discordant? NBC chimes as discordant? All right, when we come back from this 1 minute, 10-second break, we're going to continue this discussion. Amazing. That's why I was a twirler, ladies and gentlemen. I have no ability to hear anything we're talking about, but I'm loving this. We're going to open it up for phone calls also after this break.
Okay, folks. Like I said, part 2. You can find here. Of course, links will be in the description. And I hope this will open some eyes. Until next time, have a nice day and bye bye.